All right, guys, we are live. And if you are watching us from LinkedIn, please don't forget to comment because the last time we were going live on Tuesday, 11 a.m. ET, we were facing some issues with LinkedIn Live, but finally looks like LinkedIn has resolved that for us. And I can't wait to announce, obviously, my today's guest, Logan Havern and Ryan Grosso on the Ravit Show. Just a little about Logan. He's the founder and CEO of Data Logs. He started his career as an engineer, but quickly transitioned into the data space by participating in hackathons and Kaggle projects. He was also the founder of Blip Biometrics. And yes, I do see a message coming from LinkedIn. So it's working. Thanks, Shruti, for that message. Also, about a little about Ryan. He's an entrepreneurial data scientist, business leader, advisor, and early stage investor. He is an experienced leader with more than a decade of solving complex problems across various industry sectors. And also, he lives on board. That's I don't want to keep it a secret anymore. Ryan, you should tell us. We'll talk a little about that. So looking forward to that. Also, today we will discuss about their journey, data discovery, data quality, importance of business context with data, and much more. So if you guys are looking for answers in data discovery, data quality, feel free to ask any questions to Logan and Ryan. They're here to completely for you guys and ask some questions out there. Also, not only limiting to that, we are also giving away a free annual subscription of 365 data science today. So what you just need to do is type in hashtag 365 data science in the comment section, and you will be up for the raffle, and we'll announce the winners by end of the show. Okay, without wasting any more time, let's have Logan and Ryan here. Hey, Logan. Hey, Ryan. Welcome to the Ravit Show. How's it going?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Very excited to be here. Thanks.
Fantastic, Ryan. I was just telling folks about you living on the boat. That's the exciting part. And Logan, definitely we are talking a lot about the hackathons that you visit and you win. There are people who just visit hackathons and obviously they don't win, but you are out there and winning all the hackathons. So looking forward to that. Knowing about how what are the best practices when you go and visit hackathons for our audience. Okay, quickly. Yes, Shruti is here. We have Nelson also joining us. We have Christine from Chicago joining us. We have Aditi here. She says hi. So everyone's here. Everyone's looking forward to knowing you guys more. So why not introduce yourself, Logan? Maybe you first.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for having us here. We're very excited to talk all things data, from data quality, data discovery, data understanding, and answer any questions everyone has. So really appreciate you all tuning in. And then to tell you about myself. So I grew up in Texas outside of Houston, and then went to school at Texas A&M and studied industrial engineering. But during that studying industrial engineering, I began to develop an interest in data. And then when I started my career, I started working at JetBlue on an engineering team, but most of my role was focused on data analytics and data science projects. And then I started Data Logs about a year ago. I actually just built the first version myself with a platform called Bubble. And then since we've been able to grow a little bit, get a few more clients and scale and start growing the team. So that's a little bit about me and where we're at with Data Logs. So I'd love to answer any questions, but I'll turn over to Ryan to introduce himself now.
Awesome. Thanks, Logan. Yeah, so hi, my name is Ryan Grosso. I grew up in New York, a little bit above New York City. I then went and got a PhD in experimental particle physics outside of Chicago at Fermilab. So hello to the Chicago viewers. But during that time, I kind of came into data science from that academic route. I was finishing up my degree, and I just got excited about all the potential out there in the tech industry. So I left academia. I went through a boot camp called Insight Data Science. At that time, got me into the tech scene and things of that nature. After that, I became a technical advisor actually for that. So I've gotten to see a lot of different industry sectors and a lot of different needs and team structures from that. And I also am a director of data science for Spark Beyond. So a bunch of interesting experiences that I'm going to get to share today. About 3 or 4 months back, I met Logan. We chatted, super excited about data logs, the platform, where his vision is for the future of data and data cataloging and data discovery. And yeah, we can talk about the exciting part. I do live on a boat, full-time live on a boat. Exactly. Yeah, that's me. Excited to be here.
So Ryan, you have to show that view you showed us earlier.
Exactly, okay. Please.
I promise I will show the view. So I'm not physically on the boat today. The internet was a little weak, so I decided to dinghy over in my small boat to a different location that has really, really great coffee. And as you can see, a really, really phenomenal view. Wow. There you all go.
Wow.
And where is this, Ryan?
This is, so currently I'm in Grenada in the West Indies. So I'm typically based out of New York in Manhattan. But, you know, with COVID, my wife and I, we decided, let's buy a boat and live on a boat. We've always wanted to do it. So the boat's now in Grenada, and we'll be planning in the fall to kind of make our way back and around.
Fantastic. Thanks for that introduction, guys. A quick question for Logan, definitely. One thing that I wanted to ask Logan about your you leaving your full-time job, and then obviously we have seen data logs doing so well. You've been participating in hackathons, in various types of competitions as well, and you're building your own brand. So how difficult was it to start, or maybe what motivated you actually to start with data logs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've always been someone who really likes to keep myself busy. So if I'm not working, I want to be doing something productive rather than just sitting around doing different things. So I've always been okay, what can I be doing with my spare time? And always kind of dabbled and had some sort of side hustle or project going on in my spare time. So when I was at JetBlue and when COVID hit, no one was flying anymore on the airlines at all. So because of that, they actually had to reduce everyone's salary as well as hours just to give people time back in their day and save the company a little money, because literally no one was flying planes anymore. But this freed up so much of my time that I had basically an extra day, 3-day weekend every weekend for 6 months. So I used this time to really say, okay, what were the biggest challenges that I faced in the data world at JetBlue, and how can I try to solve them? So I've always had that interest for side hustles and always wanted to try to build something myself. So that was sort of the motivation that got me started with data logs. Wow. And then, yeah, so I started building it myself just in my spare time, a little bit, spending weekends, after work, before work on it. And after about 6 months of this, I was able to put a platform online, and it grew to 300, 400 users in just a few weeks. And it was just a very basic data catalog, data dictionary platform that people could use, integrate their data sets with, and start documenting. It was a lot of university students on the platform, as well as a couple different research groups. And then this sort of really excited me, okay, I'm sort of going down the right track here. But I just kept working on it in my spare time, and we kept growing. But then once I finally hit the point where I was okay, I'm sleeping 3 hours a night and I can't do a full-time job and also do this well, it was at the point where I was okay, I have to go all in and take this risk, and okay, I'm going to try to build this and make this happen, put all my effort and time and energy into this. And so that happened about, I think, 6 weeks ago now that I switched over to data logs full time. And we've seen a lot of traction and growth since then. And we're hoping to keep that momentum going and continue from there. So yeah, that's the brief overview of how it all happened.
Wow, this is a super inspirational. What do you think, Ryan, about data logs?
I think data logs is an incredible vision, and it's a space that truly needs to be tapped. There's been a few, let's call it efforts in recent years, but they really haven't cracked it. And it's time to kind of revamp it. And Logan, like I said, has an amazing drive. And I chat with him a lot, and he's got super deep passion, great vision for the product. And it's just, it's an exciting time to be in this space. Data is ever growing, right? I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now not just the number of records that you're getting is bigger, but the type of data that you get to leverage is getting more complex and such. So perfect right time for Logan to kind of take this jump.
Yeah, I think definitely that it does sound exciting, and I can definitely validate on one thing, that is, uh, obviously Logan's interest for his own brand and his passion for data logs. So, Logan, what is your airline story? About finding data, and tell us more about it.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So that like initial motivation, I was like, okay, there has to be a better way to discover data. So I was working and I got a project from my boss. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I needed this new data set to do this project. And then just to find the data set, I had to talk to an IT team who sent me to a different business team. That business team sent me to someone else in IT. That IT person sent me to someone else on the business side. So I jumped around to 4 or 5 different people before just finding the right data for this project. And then once I finally found the data, it was already, my deadline passed. I was like, okay, I couldn't even start the project. I missed my deadline. And then I finally find the right data. I'm missing the right access controls to get in and actually use the data. I was okay, this process is so inefficient. Why isn't there a better, easier way? So then I finally got access. And now like 3 weeks have gone by for a 3-day project that I was supposed to have like in just a few days.
Right.
And so those weeks went by, I finally get access. And then once I get into the data set, I start seeing like null values, different pieces I didn't understand. And just to like call out 2 different like tribal trivial knowledge issues with this data set. So what I mean by that is like when you're working with data, you need to know the context behind the different pieces. So we had one column that was like regions in the data, and there was the values NA and A and A, and I thought these were all null values. But it turns out those NA values actually stood for North America. And then I did the project completely wrong because I was missing that context behind the data. I'm like, okay, I can't find data. I don't have the context. Then I keep doing the same project. And then there's another issue. There was like timestamps in the data set. And I just assumed they were local timestamps like most of our other data sources at the company. But then once I started doing the research, like something's not adding up. It turns out those timestamps were in Zulu time rather than in local time. So when I joined on the data sets, they didn't match at all. I was like, okay, how do we not have this context documented anywhere? It just lives in the person's head who made it. There has to be like a better way to really solve this. So that was the initial motivation, is like, okay, we can do something. I can build something myself. I can try to piece something together. I've done little small projects before. There's all kinds of no code tools out there. I can try to fake it as a developer, see what happens. But yeah, that was that initial motivation.
Wow, I think definitely, it was a funny experience for you, but when you might be on the job, it might be not that funny.
Yeah. It was definitely feeling like, okay, I got to get this done. And then just mistake kept happening after mistake because I just didn't understand the background behind that data.
Very true.
Yeah.
So Shruti is here. She's very interested to know more about business context with data. So that is definitely, this is one of the examples. Also, quick question here from Aditi. What inspired you to start your own brand, Logan? One of these
Yeah,
would be this.
exactly. I think I've always just been interested in trying to create something, do something a little off the normal track. But what really inspired me to start building data logs was this, just having this big problem in my workspace. And then after I had this problem, I started talking to a bunch of my friends. So I called up everyone like, hey, you're working in data. How does your company solve this? And they're like, we don't. I have that same problem. So it just kept like bouncing around. I was like, okay, I can do something. And then one day I was just like, I don't remember, playing basketball or something with a few friends. And then the name Data Logs came to me. I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool for a brand name. I got the name, got an idea. Let's try to do something about it. So that was, the problem was really what motivated me to try to start this.
Wow, this is amazing. Also, I wanted to know more about, how does the workflow, like for finding new data, how does it look at data logs? How do you do that? And how is it coming together?
Yeah. So the way that data logs actually works is we're indexing all of a company's data sources and data assets. So if you have data in Snowflake and Redshift and Google BigQuery, we read all the schema tables, and then we also read your metadata information for your dashboarding tools. So like Power BI, Tableau, we connect to the metadata API to read, okay, who made this? When was it made? What are the charts in it? What data is behind it? And we index all of this information, scan it for a company on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And then we have this Google-like search environment after we index it all, where you can just type what you're looking for, and we show you all of the data assets for that source. And we can get a demo later. I'd love to walk through it, but we show you all of those different data assets you might need for your project. So no more asking around to IT, wandering around your company in circles in the office. Hey, where's the data? Yelling it across the rooms. But now we create this Google-like search experience where you can find data, and the next piece is understanding. So you can click into a table on data logs and really understand that context behind it.
Yeah, it actually makes something which is very practical easy for those who are looking at data, and definitely data logs is doing making it much more easy for the employees, and I'm sure for the clients as well. So a quick one for Ryan, what why not you tell us a little about you? What do you do, where you coming from, and everything about you?
Yeah, sure. So so in my current role, right, I've gotten to see a lot of different industry sectors, a lot of different teams, a lot of different
Right.
use cases and things of that nature. And what Logan speaks about is so true across every different industry sector, every different data scientist, analyst, business. It's such a long amount of time to figure out what's going on with your data. So I'll share one example. So about 3 years back or so, I was working with one of the largest insurance companies in the US. And I was tasked with helping them build a churn model. And in this process, we start the discussion, okay, what type of data do you have? Where is it located? And they're like, well, we have this one table. And I'm like, okay, there's 8 columns of data in here, or 8 columns in this data set. We have to have more. We're not going to be able to really do anything with this. So they say, oh, okay. We know the company as well. So, okay, let's bring in Dun & Bradstreet data. Great. Where is that? We got to go find it. So they go and find it. What else can we have? Let's bring in information about our interactions with that person, right? Because maybe after the first 6 months when you've sold a policy, you want to engage that person and say, hey, you want to buy a policy again next year. So okay, let's bring in call center data and things like that. That was a mess to even come close to where it was, let alone what the data looked like, right? So we go through a few different data sources, and we get towards the end of the project, as always delayed, right? Because access was a pain and things like that. But it's important to know the team that I was working with, they were a junior team. They didn't really know the full business context of how underwriting works and how policies are actually delivered to people. And it turns out that there's a whole different dimension to this, which is once the policy is underwritten and proposed, it actually goes through a brokerage. And a few different brokers pick it up. So there's a whole wealth of data and insights coming from what brokerage picked up the offer. What's the tenure of the broker? It's actually quite predictive of, more senior brokers will cater the policy and give good deals, and people actually have a longer lifetime value, i.e. less likelihood to churn as well. And this goes back to Logan's point where he's talking about this tribal knowledge and understanding business context, right? Because we didn't know that, we asked a few people and we're like, oh, this is kind of how it works, but we didn't really know how it works. And just imagine if you could go into something like data logs and say, I'm doing customer lifetime value. I'm doing a churn model. Do we have a data set that connects to the company who sold it? And then all of a sudden you see this and you're like, oh, there's a whole brokerage table here. Let me bring this into my problem. And all of a sudden I get to know this information 10 weeks ago, 3 months early, or whatever have you, instead of getting to the end and being like, wow, that would have been great if we would have been able to bring that in. And this problem happens all too often, again, in so many different types of use cases and teams. So something like data logs, like I said, not only just the context of what the data means, but expanding the universe of what data can be brought into the problem that you're trying to solve is extremely powerful.
Yeah, I know. I think definitely that makes a lot of sense, and it is a very interesting example that you've just given. So, question to both Logan and Ryan: what do you guys
Mhm.
think? How much time does a data analyst actually spends on data discovery? Because it kind of, obviously, kind of relates to the example that you've just said, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, Ryan, I love that example. And I know you haven't shared it with me before, but that sounds like such a big use case for a product. And I wonder like what other companies across the board suffer from similar issues with just without that knowledge documented in one place. How do you figure that out and get around that? But yeah, Ravi, to answer your question about how much time. So, of course, since we're building a product to solve this, we want to say 100% of the time spent on data discovery, but realistically, that's probably not true. But a study came out
Yeah.
from Lyft a few years ago that said their data analysts and data scientists were spending 20% of their week just trying to find and understand data. So
Mhm.
20% is literally 1 day a week of just trying to find and understand this data. So imagine if you can get 1 day back a week with something that can index and help those data tools to easily find what you're looking for. So yeah, so that's what I've
Mhm.
heard from that one study. But in my own experience at working for different companies and hearing from different friends talk about this problem, I'd estimate anywhere from 10 to 20% of a data analyst, data scientist time can be spent just trying to find and understand the right data. And then Ryan,
Wow.
I'm not sure if you agree or disagree, but love to hear it.
No.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. But to add on to it, it when you hear percentages, right? They're distributions and things like that, and that number is right. But it's important to note that if you don't have an understanding of your data or an access to your data, right? It's a full stop on the project, right? It's one of those things that you can't move forward. So maybe that 20% of the time is just all at the very beginning, right? Or it's extremely long and that's delaying other things that could get done, right? So it's not like a linear, every day I
Right.
wake up and I do 30 minutes doing my emails and getting to inbox zero, right? Like that, that's X percentage, whatever have you. But it's important to know that it could be a huge barrier. And that type of time is super painful for businesses when they're trying to get stuff done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, going back to that story of my data discovery experience, I may not
Mhm.
have had to spend all that time just every week looking for data. But when I did need that new data, it delayed this project like
Mhm.
weeks. That was supposed to be a quick
Right.
turnaround just because I didn't have that business context, didn't know where it was located. So that's a really good point.
Mhm. Awesome. A quick question from the audience, actually from YouTube, that I would love to pick is for Logan. Hi, Logan and Robert. Thanks for this session. Can you tell us a little about your experience with data when you were working in airlines? So,
Yeah, yeah.
anything that any example that you would want to share?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. So, an airline, if you can imagine, has so much data, whether it's customer data, data
Definitely.
about how many bags, there's safety data about incidents of what happens on planes, there is fueling data. We have to calculate the weights and loads to get the right balance on the plane for every single flight. There's
Right.
delay data. So, there's just so many different assets of data at an airline, which I think it makes it one of the most challenging, exciting areas to solve problems in the data space because
Mhm.
there's just so many different areas to focus on that you can pretty much optimize, use data science in almost every different facet of the airline. And an airline, like for me, it's like running a ton of mini businesses and operations all in this one just to make one plane fly. Like if you think you have the security group to get through, you have the flight attendants, you have the pilots, you have the airport staff, there are so much data that an airline generates. It's just crazy. But yeah, to talk about like my focus when I was working at the airline and what I really worked on is I was on a team that helped out with on-time performance. So it was our group's area to do our best to prevent flight delays. How can we stop delays from happening? So I had a few pretty cool projects with just trying to build models to actually predict when a delay of a flight's going to happen. So if we know that the fueling team is going to arrive late because they were behind on 3 other aircrafts, how can we say, okay, this flight has a 60% chance of being delayed. Let's add some more staff or try to speed up a different process there. So I think airlines are still definitely on the earlier side, maybe of using data science, but that's just going to increase in the next 10, 20, 30 years and just going to grow so much of all the different opportunities to begin working data. So if you have the opportunity to work as a data scientist or a data analyst for an airline, I highly recommend it. It was probably the fastest I've learned something in my life, and just different
Wow.
areas I really picked up working from that industry.
Yeah, I think definitely that makes a lot of sense, and that's a very interesting field to be in. I think, which is air industry. People do think, okay, there are various industries, but airlines don't think that there's a need of data scientists. But I think that's one of the most fast-growing industry. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know about what's the situation in pandemic though.
Right. Yeah, I think during the pandemic, it was definitely hard with people not flying, but
Hmm.
the sort of recovery for the airlines was almost a V-shaped recovery. So airlines, it tanked down, no one's flying, and then it
Yeah,
maybe stayed down for a little bit. I guess my hand was off screen. And then when vaccines started coming out, different things, the booking curve just shot right back up. So I think at least from in the US, the TSA numbers are at what they were above in 2019 month to month. I'm not sure how the different COVID variants might affect that over the next few months, but this
yeah,
summer, I think it was one of the busiest times ever for airlines. And then to
yeah.
turn it over to Ryan, I'd love to hear about Ryan, any thoughts, because you've worked with so many different industries, about what you
Exactly.
think some of the most complicated data projects problems are, exciting industries to work in. I'm definitely biased towards airlines because that's where the bulk of my experience is.
Yeah, no. I think one of the most interesting industries, if you will, is not really a specific industry, but a specific type of problem in an industry. So, for example, anything that has to do with like customer relationship and customer lifetime value, things like that. There's a large amount of information now of like, what are your purchasing patterns? Are you having a good time? Are you able to bring in things like call center type data? So anything in that realm of customer lifetime value, I think, is an extremely important space that really hasn't been explored too much, right? And it really comes down to the back bottom line of, well, we want to keep our customers, and that's an important thing for any business, right? So anything that has that type of rich data and that type of rich problem case, I think is something that's really interesting. Data. Also, it's I think worth noting that people, I don't think, started to really realize the power of use cases in that space. So therefore, they didn't really capture a lot of the data, the right type of data along the way. You'll have very often I see companies where they say, "Oh, here's my good customers," and it's like, okay, well, how did you figure out good? Like, what do you mean good customers? And it's just literally some some person sitting there saying, "Yeah, I like this dude, I like this girl, this is great, blah blah blah. They're an amazing company, they're good." And it's like, that doesn't help. Like, so I think that space is super ripe for something in data.
Right. It really makes sense. So, uh, actually, there was a quick comment from Bruce who agreed on the data discovery. The same in aerospace, at least 20% every process is generating data capture and format is a big issue. So, do you also have any say in the aerospace industry? Do you know more about it, Logan?
Yeah, so I've never actually worked in the aerospace
Yeah.
industry, but when working at an airline, we do interact a lot with aircraft data. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Boeing or Airbus, the amount of data that those aircrafts produce every couple minutes, and just to keep a safe flight, like that is so much data, and just another major asset that I'm sure there's so much different work that can go on. And
Hmm.
I think Bruce's comment, so at least 20% of every process is
Yeah.
generating data. That is huge. So that's going to be so much
Hmm.
data, and there's going to be so many different things that pop up and can go along with it. But I guess after hearing Ryan talk about the one sector and then my experience in airlines, like we are kind of at the forefront of, as this data is being generated, more and more of it, how are companies going to take full advantage of it? Because I think as your data volume increases, it also gets messier and more confusing to work with. because just because your data volume is increasing doesn't mean you're necessarily going to scale your data team at the same speed. So how do you continue to manage that context around it? How do you keep consistent documentation? How do you, when people come in and out, prevent change from happening? So there's, as data grows and grows, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that pop up, but also challenges with the documentation, discovery, quality, and a bunch of different pieces there.
Yeah, I think if I could just add on to that, right? There's this whole other dimension that I think people forget about, right? But this serendipitous connection to data that you would have never thought to explore, right? If you can easily visualize and see, like, maybe a lineage map of how data connects, you could, like, going back to the insurance example, I would have never thought to bring in broker level data, and maybe now we can build in, or that company actually have done this, built-in processes to vet the brokers that are coming in, because they want good quality brokers based on a certain set of parameters. And when I'm solving a problem, sometimes I just don't think what data is the most important. Maybe I have a bias towards things. Maybe I don't know about things. And one of the things I said to Logan that I like to say, it's like, you can't find insights from the data that you own if you don't know you have it, right? So if it's sitting somewhere in your company and you don't even know about it, but it is joinable, like, if you don't know about it, you can't find those insights. And something like data logs to surface this right up to the front is a whole nother dimension of not just speed to finding and getting data, but speed to creativity of seeing what data could be useful.
Yeah, I actually saw a stat the other day, and I think I wrote a brief LinkedIn post about it. So anyone, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I've been trying to follow in Ravit's footsteps of putting out quality content that is helpful to the
You're doing that already. Yeah.
But yeah, so this quote was focused on, I think it said 75% of enterprise data at companies is untouched. So there is all this dark data out there that hasn't been discovered, don't know how it was created, but that's a whole opportunity in itself. Like, how do we unlock that extra 75% of dark data out there? Imagine, like, the projects that could happen from just unlocking those different assets and helping them be used at companies on an enterprise level.
Cool. 75% is a huge number when you say it's untouched data. Do you mean, Logan, is it the bad data, or is it just not known to the company folks yet, and it can be worked around, but the company obviously has so much to do that they can't touch that 75% already?
Yeah, I think just because so much data is automatically generated and being stored in a data warehouse somewhere, that a lot of data assets are just growing faster than the rate of the data analyst, data scientist, how many of those are available to actually do the data work. But what comes along with that is the missing documentation. How do you understand the quality if no one's worked with it before? So there's that whole context piece that's also missing to help understand, okay, how can we use all of this data that's in different places at the company?
Yeah, it is very interesting. And George Firikin actually mentions the same thing, that I think the dark data can have some great potential. So maybe companies might want to actually explore more from that 75% of the data and can get more business out of it, or can change some structural functions in the company. So it does make a lot of sense. Okay, before I pick a question from Facebook, which is a very interesting question from Sumit Sawan, I would actually want to know from you guys, what are some of the best examples where you have seen data make a huge impact on an organization, and if you can share some experiences there.
Ryan, I think I'll let you take this one first, and then I can give a stab at it after.
Sure. So there's, I have so many examples from this, and again, seeing a spectrum of different types of companies, it's very obvious that the companies that invest in their data assets, invest in their data understanding, invest in, like, good infrastructure, these are the ones that actually thrive very, very, very well. And the ones that don't are the ones that are continuously struggling, continuously not producing things, not producing to the best top quality. And another interesting insight that I kind of found from this is companies that don't do that actually have a pretty high turnover rate, because people just get frustrated. People don't, they're like, okay, this is just a mess. I want to go to a company that is organized and I can, leverage my skills and go from that. So there's tons and tons of examples. Maybe Logan, I'll leave it to you in case there's one in particular, but it's a high level theme that really comes up over many different types of industries and companies.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. And then to sort of go a different direction with it, I think what really excites me, like just when I'm living like my day-to-day life and I'm like, oh, data science powers that. So there's like so many different things that pop up on a daily basis. Like just one is like when I commute somewhere, I'm living in New York City. So I take the subway route and like if I looked at a map and try to figure out, but the data that just Google Maps uses to give me the best point A to point B, or a Netflix recommendation can tell me what I want to watch better than I know myself. So like different pieces of that, like just seeing data science in my everyday life, that just gets me so excited. Like, okay, there's so much opportunity out there in different pieces. So Ravit, I'd love it to turn it back to you to hear something in your life where you've seen data on just like that everyday basis. Do you have an example?
I think it's very clear for me. Uh, it's about the exercise that I really do. Maybe that data, how am I putting it together? And how does my app tells me that maybe you need to run 2 kilometers more because you've already been running, the same distance for the last 15 days. And now it's time
Oh
for you
yeah.
to run 2 kilometers more. So that's something I think is, how everything's been tracked. It's not only about it will not only track my diet, it will but also track about my running, about different things that will involve in an exercise. So definitely I think that data kind of excites me sometimes, because you can go back and look at it after a year and it's like, oh my god, I've come a long way. So those data are definitely, and I think that's the way how companies and how brands are actually gathering data. And it comes back to your point where 75% of the data is untouched still with them,
Right.
because it's so much. So it does make a lot of sense.
So what is this workout app? Do we need to get it?
You can give it a try. It's fast track.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's something which keeps you. I know for sure Ryan won't do that because he's on board.
I'll run around the boat.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I won't miss on this question from Sumit Sawant. He's on Facebook. How accurately can you predict customer behavior using data science? Is the cost to benefit positive in most cases? Interesting question.
That one sounds like a Ryan question.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting question because in a lot of instances, you can bring in a lot of data and you can reasonably accurately predict customer behavior. But the real question to kind of ask and think about is, at the end of the day, it's not great, or it's not useful to be able to predict the behavior. What you want to do is you want to be able to change or leverage or influence the behavior. If you know someone is going to leave your subscription or something like that, well, that's fine. But what you really want to know is why are they going to leave your company, leave your subscription. So so the answer again to that exact question is yes, you can do it really, really well. But I tell a lot of people it's okay to sacrifice the performance of your models, the performance of your data insights in balance and in conjunction with something that's actionable, right? I will gladly take a model that has 90% or whatever, on performance instead of 99%, because I have a model that's actionable. And I can say, oh, I know why this person is going to churn. It's because they've called 3 times and we haven't gotten them an answer. Then maybe you need to fast track them and get a specialist on the call. Or I know that they are not gonna, or I know that they're gonna churn because they've been unhappy with the delivery time for their products or whatnot. Maybe just throw them a package and say, hey, you're a valued customer. And if you know the reasons why, that's in my opinion way more important than just knowing that the behavior is about to happen. Does it make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Nice one there, Ryan.
Great question. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sumedh. Nice one. quickly, just wanted to remind folks who are just joining in that we are giving away 365 Data Science course. So feel free to hashtag 365 Data Science in the chat, and we'll be doing a raffle by end of the show. Not only limiting to that, we are also giving free access to only to the Ravit Show viewers and Logan has been very kind for doing that for us. So where can they actually look out for that? Is it datalogs.io/ the Ravit Show?
Yeah. So to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that is,
Yeah, please.
so we've been building this enterprise data discovery solution for some time, but over the next few months, we're going to be releasing a version focused on the end user for data. So what that means is we basically want to create an easy way for anyone to document data. We don't necessarily have to integrate all of your company's data warehouses and have that complete buy-in. So this would be great for like a Kaggle project, or maybe if you're doing a class on data science, somewhere to centralize all that documentation. So we're envisioning this light version of data logs to be where you can basically copy any data set in any format into this version, and we'll help you with smart documentation to briefly talk about, okay, what does each column mean? We'll try to predict some areas there. We'll have a question board to store all of the trivial tribal knowledge, as well as an area to upload code snippets. So basically just our goal is to make the easiest way for anyone to quickly document data. And we're going to put that out for free online in a few months. And we'd love to give early access to the Ravit Show to help us test it, try it out, give us feedback over the next few months. So I think Ravit has the link up now, and I think it's in the chat, but we'd love to share it with anyone interested. And then also, if you're really interested in helping out or even testing or giving one of our tools a try, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. We're building a bunch of different products and rolling them out over the next few weeks, few months. So we'd love to get feedback along the way, and really love getting it from the community, the power data users out there.
Yeah, definitely. I've just shared the link with the folks, and it's in the post as well. So don't feel free to go and check it out yourself. It's just for the Ravit Show viewers. So I'm very happy about that. Thanks, Logan, for making it very special for the audience here. A quick question from Bruce that I would love to take. Can you talk about data visualization and education for upper management?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that happens so often at companies where someone creates some sort of great dashboard, different piece, but how do you get that upper management to actually adopt it and begin using it? And rather than relying on like some weekly email report that comes through, to actually go in and use these dashboard tools that so many data analysts, data scientists are building and putting out there. So I think that has to go with a lot at the culture at the company. And sometimes that can start from the bottom up to make changes, or as well as a top down initiative where a company brings on a new data lead, data focused person to help grow from there. But I think like as time goes on, the importance of data to leadership is going to keep growing. And that data literacy piece that I think I've heard talked about from on George's show, on Ravit's show, is how do we increase data literacy at different companies? So how can we have the leadership really invested and focused on those best data practices where they're really empowering and helping the data analysts using the reports they generate? So I don't know a golden solution on how to convince upper management who is resistant to data change to start using data visualizations tools and really counting on those data analysts, data scientists more. But I think as the culture of data just keeps growing and continuing over the next few years, it's only going to increase since the demand for dashboards like that. And then Ryan, I'm sure you have a different take on this, and I'd love to hear it as well.
Yeah, no. I think the most important thing to remember is that, I tell a lot of people, like, you don't learn particle physics overnight, right? I did schooling for 7 years to kind of barely learn it, if you will. But it's the same with working with data in your upper management and your C-suite and things like that. It's a journey, right? It takes time to understand how and why data is visualized a certain way and the value that comes from it. So the one thing I can encourage people is that, like, if you're on this journey of building it from the ground up, again, like, look, I don't have a golden solution, but what I will say is don't give up, right? It takes change, it takes time. Try different techniques, try different visuals. Some people like chart A, some people like chart B, and see what works in your company. Different companies are going to have different cultures and different behaviors, but don't give up on trying to make the whole company as data-driven as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you can also, I guess, going as a data person trying to convince people to use more data is A/B testing it. So try something. If that doesn't work, try something else. So like Brian said, just keep trying those different options to convince. And eventually I think people will like something. And then if they don't like anything, be like, hey, I sent you these 5 different options. Just curious why you didn't use any of these. Like, I'd love to get your feedback, loop them in, like, okay, if I built this, would this be more useful if we did an email report? So A/B testing to figure out, okay, how can we get that buy-in from people who are resistant?
Very true.
Yeah, good point.
Nice one. Okay, I would love to take this question from Mike Nash. Do you find the most companies are not aware of the value of their data, and have you had eureka moments when you have explained the possibilities? We can talk about obviously the 75% of the data, untouched data, but anything other than that?
Yeah. So I think to a lot of companies, data can just be a buzzword. So like we are leveraging data to do X, Y, Z, but the actual how they're getting and beginning to do that isn't always happening in practice. So I think a lot of companies want to be data driven and are starting a lot of digital transformation initiatives, but they're not necessarily actually executing on those initiatives. But I think as time goes on, as more data tools are out there to make this easier, as more data science, data analyst talent exists that can help accelerate this, I think this will only grow. So I think right now the biggest gap in basically companies not understanding the full value is just, do they have the right tools, the right people in place to take advantage of that data they have? And that's not a priority for every company. So if you have someone generating billions in revenue and they have no competition, and they may not need or find that that's a priority right now to focus on data. So you may not be able to convince every company of the value of their data has today. Even if it could increase their margin by 10% or 20%, it may not be a priority at this time. But I think as time goes on and as tools evolve and as more data analysts, data scientists exist, that they'll only find more value in the future.
Yeah, to add on a little bit to that, I think one of the best ways to get the eureka moments for this, where people understand, is to actually not bore them with slides and numbers and things like that, but to just show them here's the platform, here's an example of how your problem ties into what this platform can do for you, and it's another great plug for the link to give data logs out a try, because that is the best way to really map together and show that, oh, no, there's a real platform. You can type, you can search, you can explore, you can code, whatever have you, as opposed to, well, here's a slide deck on how it worked for someone else, right? That's, so I think that's, in my experience, one of the best ways to get people to see that is to really tie it together to, here, look, it's a real thing. I'm not selling you smoke. I'm not selling you anything like that. Like, you can use it and give it a try.
Yeah, it's more like where you are actually satisfying the customer well beforehand, before selling them anything, and letting them know that this is the product that you're looking out for, and this is how it is solving your problem. So it does make a lot of sense, Ryan. Thanks for that explanation. Nice one, Logan. Okay, so before I take any questions from the audience, I had a question which was around your experiences that you might have faced with quality issues in the past. So were there any quality issues, like maybe bad data or anything around those lines? I would love to know those experiences.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think when working with data, one of the most important things that if you don't have data that you can trust, data that you can understand, you probably won't be able to produce the best results. So I think for every data source that exists, some validation needs to happen to ensure the information is accurate. Because if you're building a model or a dashboard or a different piece, how can you really generate that insight if the data is wrong? That is like the core to your project, to your job. So I think data quality is a very, very important thing. And understanding it to me comes in two different ways. So one is you can automate data quality understanding in some way by trying to figure out, okay, how many outliers are there in the data? What is the mean, median, mode, and trying to just do some basic statistics to understand, okay, what values don't line up in this data? Is it making sense? And then also sanity check. So if you know that this timestamp should be near this value, and you compare that to real time and it's 6 minutes off every time, and the variability of how much that data is off, you're like, okay, maybe I can't rely on this data as much. And then the last piece to data quality, I think, actually comes from the users who create it and the people who use it. So how can you document that piece of, okay, this is a data set that's been validated, that is good, that has our stamp of approval. Where can that live? So we're actually trying to solve that in data logs. Is like, how can you understand as a data analyst, your company might have 1,000 data sets, but only 100 of them have that stamp of approval that they're good to use, they're good to go. Because the worst feeling in the world is doing an entire project and then realizing, I did this great project, but the data that helps me get there is not right. So none of my insights make sense. And you go present it to your leadership and they're like, well, that seems off. Like, what happened? And then you're like, check all your work. It all looks good. You're like, no, I'm good. I'm smart. I did this. I checked it. I had my friend check it. But then you finally, after days, weeks, get to that data source. You're like, oh, the data I used is bad. I just wasted 3 weeks, a month. So that's just a little bit there. And then Ryan, I think you have a data quality story as well.
Yeah, I do. Real quick one. So I was, it's actually a really, really interesting data quality phenomena. I was working with some Airbnb data in New York City. I'm working on the pricing model for that. And Airbnb data, right, has a large amount of textual information in it, right? It also has, Airbnb also has the location information. And as I was sifting through this data, one of the things I was noticing was that there were two columns. One column about a sub-neighborhood of where an Airbnb was listed, and then another column called cleansed. And I was like, oh, great, they've done the data cleaning for me. I'll just use the cleansed neighborhood, right? Like, thank you. And there wasn't much documentation on it for this particular column. So I go through and I run, a few analyses. I find some insights. Everything's looking great. And then I start to explore a little bit deeper on this uncleansed version. And one of the things that I found out was that Airbnb, in that cleansed version, right, since they know the location from the latitude and longitude, if the user does not put in that information of the neighborhood that they're in, they'll just impute it. And it turns out in some sub-neighborhoods, specifically on the northern part of Manhattan, if you as the Airbnb host did not put your neighborhood description in, there was actually a very strong indicator for the price of that listing. By the fact of not labeling that neighborhood, people were kind of hiding the fact of which sub-neighborhood it was in. So there's signal in a lot of things if you understand how it's captured and not, just jumping to a cleansed version or things like that. So really interesting phenomena. Just wanted to share it quick.
All right. Yeah.
I was going to say that's a great example. And
exactly,
it can happen anywhere. Like Airbnb is such an established tech company.
It happens everywhere. Yeah.
It's a problem across the board.
Yeah. All right, Logan, I definitely want to know more about your tool, about what you're building. So if you can give us a quick overview about the tool, or maybe you can share something about data logs. It would be very interesting. You can feel free to share your screen so we can have a look at the tool as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to do a quick 3-4 minute demo of what we're building and then just talk about it from there. So we're actually, our goal is to make data discovery, data understanding instantaneous rather than having to ask around, talk to so many different people. So if everyone can just imagine that you're a data scientist at a car dealership and your project is to build a model to predict the average car price in 2 years from now. So the first step to building this model is you need data. So our goal is to make it as easy as a Google search. So you would come on data logs and our company would have indexed all of your data assets at your company. And you'd be able to instantly see all of the data tables and all of the dashboards that relate to that data set. You can see the status. So that quality that we talked about earlier, which one has the stamp of approval, is production ready. And then once you find the right data, The next piece is, okay, how do you understand it quickly? So the way that data logs works is we're reading all of the schema tables and all the information about dashboards at a company. We allow users to input definitions, what things mean, add comments. So if there's red flags like, hey, this column has a bunch of null values, or there's this issue, this problem, you can flag it all in data logs so that that trivial tribal knowledge is captured. We also have a discussion board. So conversations about the data live with the data itself. So rather than being lost on Teams or Slack, it's one place where all of your conversations about the data can be. And we're actually building out integrations with Microsoft Teams and Slack. So if you ask a question on data logs, it would ping the table owner in Teams to say, hey, you were asked this question, can you respond? And it goes right back into data logs. And then we also allow people to upload code templates. So all those different metrics, queries that can be used, you can publish them right here. And then the last piece we do is we actually scrape the data lineage from companies' data warehouses. So the idea with this is that we go in and read your SQL query logs and then create this larger map of how everything's connected at the company. And then right now we're working with a few startups to mid-sized companies to help them basically understand their data environment. But for us, it's never too early to start documenting data, and it should be something from the start. So as you're in the early stages of data, building out these documentation and tools go with it, it's a lot easier to solve that problem today versus 2 years from now when you have so much data. So our goal is to partner with small companies. Like I think Christine mentioned something about small companies on the comments on YouTube. But our goal is to begin helping from the start. So as you grow, your data is documented, usable for everyone at your company, rather than just staying in that messy zone that can cause issues. So that's the quick demo of our product. But yeah, if anyone's interested in using it, just feel free to go to our website and fill out the book demo, and we'll show you a more in-depth demo of how everything works on the front and back end of it.
Wow, that's fantastic. And a quick question to you, Logan. What are you most excited about? Which features are you most excited about in data logs?
Yeah. So I think Ryan really talked about it earlier, but how can we build that universe of data? So let's say you're a data scientist and you're working on a project with this price data table, and you have one or two other tables that you know. We as data logs can recognize, okay, you're doing this project. How can we make smart suggestions to help you do better work? How can we recommend other tables that can help you to use that? So our goal is basically, how can we use as much data science as possible to help you better understand your data at your company? So that's what I'm really excited for, is the different data science tools that we can build on top of our platform over the next few years.
Sounds like a plan. I think definitely you're going to make some strides out there, Logan. Okay, I would love to take this question, and this was my question as well to you, Logan. What's next for data logs and what's coming up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we are going to be growing a little bit over the next few months. We have some new clients starting up with us. So our goal is really, how can we make them happy and grow our business? And as far as a product goal is, our goal is to create the most metadata available on the market. So how can we understand pieces from the actual data itself, like who's using it, what's it being used for, how is everything connected, and then tie that all back into the tribal trivial knowledge that lives in the data user's head. So how can we extract and combine those two pieces to create the largest knowledge base of metadata available on the market? So that's our end goal, is how do we build up this metadata knowledge base? We're still in the early stages. We're a fairly new startup, growing pretty quickly, but that's our end goal, is how do we build out this larger metadata asset to make data easier over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
All right, that's amazing. We're close to an hour, and it's time for us to, quickly announce the winners for today's 365 Data Science raffle. I'll just quickly do that. I know Ryan has to jump on another meeting, so we will announce it here. All the best to all the participants out there. We'll be giving an annual subscription. Yeah, fingers crossed to you guys. And the winner is Rajesh. Congratulations, Rajesh, for participating. And everyone, I do give away one annual subscription every time during my show. So feel free to check your luck back again. But getting back to you guys, Logan, Ryan, it was such a pleasure to learn more about data logs, about what you're doing, Ryan. And obviously, we still have a lot of, I still want to talk a lot around how you live on board, Ryan. So that conversation we need to have. And if one last question for you guys, if folks want to reach out to you, which is the best place they can reach out?
Yeah, I think for me, just adding me on LinkedIn and shooting me a message. And then I'd love to connect, talk about anything data, anything our products. So yeah, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And my name's just Logan Havern on there, Havern.
Same exact goes for me, except Ryan Grosso.
Awesome. It was great to have you guys. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thanks again, Logan, Ryan. Have a nice day ahead. Okay.
Thanks, Ravit.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.